when the Broadcom acquisition was announced, there was a broad range of reactions, shall we say, in the marketplace. VMware itself was an absolute hotbed of innovation. We literally were, patents popping out every other day, and we were kind of more like a religious leader in sort of, the new gadgets, the new features, the new bits that we're doing. That's so exciting to me. We reorganized the whole of R&D, flipped it on its head.
It used to be sort of like a parts company, and now you're actually selling the car.
Yeah, completely. We went from 42 to 7 data centers in 14 months. And we went from 2,500 people managing our private cloud to 68. So how does VCF9 help? That's how it helps.
Cloud was supposed to save us. Swipe a card, spin up the servers, job done. It was meant to make IT simple, cheap, and limitless. But 20 years later, the bills are racking up. Compliance is an absolute nightmare. So ask yourself this. Do you even know where your data is being stored at the minute? Most can't answer that. Now Broadcom's made its move, $61 billion, VMware cut down to one product, customers suing, Fortune 500s signing decade-long deals. So what's the truth here? Is Broadcom breaking VMware or forcing the future the rest of us were too scared to build? So today we're asking, why hasn't public cloud delivered? What does Broadcom's big VMware reset really mean? And what should IT leaders do next? To cut through this, we've got Joe Baguley, EMEA CTO at Broadcom. For more than a decade, he's been in the room with banks, governments, and global giants, helping them figure out where their workloads really belong, public, private, or both. Joe, welcome to State of Systems.
It's good to be here.
Before we get started, we have a hacker handle. So we ask all our guests, which is your first pet and your latest illness or ailment? Mine, for example, is Andy Gout.
Andy Gout, right. Well, mine would be Rupert, and I can't remember my last, I don't know, really, ailment.
You just coughed a minute ago.
I am deaf and should be wearing a hearing aid.
Rupert flu.
Rupert deaf. Yeah, there we are, yeah.
And then mine would be Ben shoulder pop still. I think I need to go to the physio for that one. It's been 3 episodes now, and my shoulder is still really bad, but yeah.
Joe, can we take a bit of a walk back? Everyone rushed into public cloud, often without really thinking about it. Some workloads thrived, others were a disaster. Can we go through the classics with you? Big ERP systems got lifted into the cloud in the early rush. What actually happened when people tried that?
Well, look, it's just, I'll say it now and it will come up again, but every conversation about technology ends up being one about people and process, right? An ERP system has always been the biggest, chunkiest thing in most large enterprises, right? It's what they spend the most. They seem to think it's the most important application. Actually, to be fair, the most important application in most admin enterprises is email and spreadsheets, but in reality, ERP is what they think they care about. And so they've always spent big money on that and moved it across, mainframes across to the mini computers. If you follow back through history, we had ERP systems, it ran on the mainframe, and then mini computers came through, AS400. So we move it all to AS400. And then, Unix is around, so let's move it all and run it on RS6000 if we're going through the IBM product line. And then, let's move it onto Windows because everyone's running stuff on Windows now. And now the cloud's along, so let's just move it onto cloud because that's what, and you kind of get this idea that that's almost what IT got in the process of doing, was just replatforming stuff. And so when cloud comes along as the next platform, it's almost like, well, surely that's what we must be doing now, is putting this onto the next platform, which is cloud. And equally, I think CIOs always look for that simplicity, right? They're always looking for a way to make it much easier and simple to manage stuff. So if I take it and I move it all over there, then I can shout at someone else about it almost, or it's going to be simpler, it's going to be easier, it's going to be, less hassle for me to manage than the stuff I'm doing on-prem. And of course, when we came along, every platform promises you it's going to be cheaper, faster, all these kind of things. And so, of course, people get taken in with it. And every single time, what we end up with is we realize they're not always cheaper and faster. What it is it's a different platform for a particular type of workload. And so you end up with this decision of the right workload, right place. And, I talk to large enterprises today that still have mainframes, right? Got a huge mainframe business, right? And that still have huge Windows Server estates and still have Linux and Unix running everything that they do and have stuff in the public cloud. So it's this, shall we move everything into one place? It's never going to work for anyone.
Yeah. And is inertia a big thing to those large corporations?
I think inertia is all about organizational inertia, right? It's about the fact that there's people that slow things down. That's actually what happens in most organizations. So it's rarely technology or technology debt that holds people back. It's usually people that hold back what we're doing with technology. It's, I've got this skill set, I've got this organization, Conway's Law starts to fire up all the time as, their comms channels start to mirror what they're building and all that other kind of thing. And it's almost like you see this horrendous mess time and time again. And, the one thing that blew me away, which we can talk about later actually, is what Broadcom ourselves did following the acquisition of VMware and reinventing our IT, because it's one hell of a story that most people don't believe until our CIO sits there and tells you it personally. It's quite shocking.
So, I mean, segues into AI perfectly. Obviously, we're talking about people, and now we've got AI coming through. Where's the benefit to the companies? Because obviously everybody talks about it, but actually, is it just a quick chat GPT lookup, or how does that actually come into the large corporations? Again,
so you see these cycles, right? So the last big hype cycle was blockchain. And everything blockchain, everyone's going to have blockchain. I'm going to put everything on the blockchain. We're going to solve everything with blockchain. And everyone went, it's just another database.
Yeah.
Right. And you go, well, could the blockchain answer used to be, could you use a database? Yes or no? If yes, then don't use blockchain, right? It's almost the same with AI. With this next big hype cycle of AI is going to solve everything. AI is going to be brilliant. It's going to do, if I'm not in AI, I'm not cool. And that's almost the thing. It's always the CIO or the tech lead or even the CEO are always concerned that if they're not talking out to their shareholders going, yeah, we're investing in AI because they're going to look bad and it's not going to work for them. So they always have to be seen to be doing it. I think like any technology, we then very quickly start to realize the limitations of that technology and start to realize where that technology should be applied and where that technology shouldn't be applied. And I think, when you look at blockchain, we took a while to get to that. There was a fair amount of hype and we went through an awful lot of discussions around that. I think we're getting to that slightly quicker with AI because I think, people were making big promises about AGI that have not delivered yet and probably won't deliver for quite a few years yet, though apparently, according to some, we were meant to have AGI today. And then again, people are starting to get their fingers burnt with LLMs and start to realize that the limitations of them, what they're doing, down to the fact that even the man on the street is starting to realize the hallucination limit of LLMs. And so, you can't start to trust your entire business to something that is still not something you can properly trust to give you the right answer every time. So then we're seeing now well-managed exercise caution. So people are investing in AI. There's no doubt about that. You just have to look at the stock prices of Broadcom, Nvidia, and others to realize that that's happening. And they are, because people are investing heavily in infrastructure for training these models. And that's why we, selling the chips and the networking to do that. But in fact, in terms of using those models and training those models and tuning those models and doing on-prem inference, I think we're now just starting to see those conversations happen broadly in the enterprise. And I commented yesterday in an internal call that it's literally the last 6 weeks, every single one of my conversations with one of our big customers has involved AI, unprompted by us. They all say, oh, tell us about private AI. Tell us what's going, because they're just starting to get to the point where we've done that bit of the hype curve. We've come down here and now we're like, okay, let's work at what we should be doing with it.
It's a bit like forming, storming, norming.
Yeah, and it is, and I think we've gone through that. You watch people go through that cycle. Some organizations are still going through that cycle with public cloud. They still think public cloud is cool and the thing to do. And you kind of like, can we just fast forward you 10 years to where everyone else is, and we now realize you have to have a private cloud too. You're seeing other people accelerate through these hype cycles. So if anything, it's good because we're getting through these hype cycles faster.
So latency, there's some industries where the cloud's never really an option. So things like telcos, banks, manufacturers, what's the clearest example you've seen where it just didn't work, where it was a massive failure, even though everyone committed to it?
I don't think we've seen like a massive failure with everyone having committed to it and come back. I think there's always been industries which were never going to be able to go all the way, both feet into the public cloud from the start, usually around compliance. It tends to be about my data's got to be somewhere, I've got certain rules I need to meet. So, we see healthcare, for example, really sort of lagging in that space. Public sector, on the other hand, still think it's cool to go public cloud first. You even see it at the UK government announcing their new public cloud deals and always on public cloud. Whereas the larger enterprises, the really big ones have sort of been through that cycle and now going through we've got to have private whatever. I don't think there's any, in my mind, major examples of, a whole industry that made a mistake. But what we do see more generically across the whole market is just people that have rushed in, poured loads of money into a project, and then you go and see them. And the classic one was I used to go and see someone and go, oh, okay, how's it going? And they go, well, we've got this project where we've got to move, 60% of our workloads into public cloud by the end of next year. And you sort of go, why? And they go, I don't really know. I think some senior guy went and played golf with someone from a public cloud and we signed a deal. And then you go sort of, well, here we are. And because I'm talking, sometimes the sort of, -1, -2 from that layer, that people actually do it. And then you go, how's it going? And they go, not very well. It's not as simple to get workloads into the public cloud as people think. It's not drag and drop. Yeah. It's you have to refactor them in most cases. You have to rewrite them, and whether they're IaaS, PaaS, or SaaS, it makes it even worse. You've got to go through quite a big change process to get in there.
And the reluctancy to change. I mean, what is it? Is it skills based? Is it not invented here? Is it is it stock market 60% like you just referenced, and we need to get to 60% because that's a number somebody stated somewhere?
Yeah, I think. I always amazes me the change thing, right? Because I work in IT because I love the excitement of all the new tech. I'm a technology guy, that's my title, right? So I love the technology. So for me, the new gadgets, the new features, the new bits that we're doing, that's so exciting to me. And then I go and find people that work in IT that absolutely abhor change. And you're like, you are in completely the wrong industry. Why are you even here if you don't like change?
Yeah.
And I understand there's a balance between risk and advancing. You've got to be careful on that. And there's regulations in some industries like finance and so on that they've got to meet a certain things. But it's really quite similar across all industries when you go to that in terms of that balance of risk. And it's so funny. I go and sit with so many banks that say, oh, we're unique, we're special, we're a bank. No, you're not. You're like every other bank. And to be fair, you're not much different to some of the other industries we talk to. And then you go and talk to defense and they go, oh, we're so special, you'd never understand. I go, I bet you I would, because I have conversations with every NATO member. They all have very similar common challenges. But I think that, they just hold themselves back with skills, as you touched on. It's a very, very true one. People just don't have the skill set in that technology, but people hang on to what they know. Yeah. I mean, I worked in the 90s for consultancies, and it became very apparent to me that consultancies then were just going from one place to the next, copy and pasting what they'd done before. Oh, I'll go and do this because we've done a Novell NetWare deployment before, and so the answer to your problem is we're going to deploy Novell NetWare. Oh, brilliant, fantastic, I'll come and do that for you. So you see an element of that where people go, I'm only going to go with what I know. And you even see that with developers where they say, oh, I must use Amazon's so-and-so service because that's the only one I know. And you go, well, actually, there's 3 different open source versions of that. You can have one on-prem, there's a version you can get in Azure, there's one in Google. You can talk to all with the same API, you can do the same thing, but they're just stuck hanging on to the one thing, like they're cuddling their safe technology, and you see that all over.
Don't you think that's, sorry to cut across, don't you think that'll get worse then as the technologies are expanding at an exponential rate?
I think this is where we have to come back to people have to start thinking much more about architecture. We come from a world of stacks, right? It used to be, I'll go and buy the IBM stack and then I'll be fine. I'll go and buy everything to bottom.
No one's fired for buying IBM.
Correct. Yeah. I'll buy the IBM stack, or I'll go buy the Oracle stack or the Sun stack or whatever, and that'll do it for me. And I think if anything, what cloud has done for us is it started to stratify architectures, and it started to separate things out into standards and APIs. So it started to say, okay, well, instead of writing to a stack, what I'm going to do is I'm going to build things in Kubernetes. I'm going to use YAML files for my configuration. We're going to do everything in containers. That gives you a portability. And so there's certain technology strata that people need to look at, and look at these layers that you go into and say, okay, here's the level we operate at, and so on, and work up. And that, I think, gives you that flexibility to use all that new technology because they come in adhering to standards. Yeah, there's thousands of different types of network switches you can buy, but they all use IP, BGP, OSM, all that kind of stuff. All those, how you operate them is still the same. And so on and so on and so forth as you go up the stack. I think this is, and AI will help us with that dramatically, especially in the coding side.
In 2023, Broadcom bought VMware for $61 billion. Mm-hmm. Since then, there's been a lot of things streamlined, including one sort of flagship product, VCF, Cloud Foundation. Since then, there's been a lot of mixed reaction. How do we make sense of all the different reactions we're getting from people saying just completely different things?
Yeah, okay, look, when the Broadcom acquisition was announced, there was a broad range of reactions, shall we say, in the marketplace with people. I think let's talk about it from the only perspective I've got, which is my perspective being part of pre-acquisition, working through the acquisition, and then working with the Competition and Markets Authority and others through that process, and then post-acquisition what we did. Mm-hmm. Let's look at VMware, and then we'll sort of flip out and come on to what you're talking about, because it's an easy way to do it. Is VMware itself was an absolute hotbed of innovation. Right, I was one of the leaders of the Office of the CTO. There was the CTO, and then myself and 2 others used to lead it. And we literally were, patents popping out every other day, and cool new tech and cool new projects. And we got a load of stuff we could be incredibly proud of. I think that one of the issues we kind of had at VMware was we almost never, we did a lot of blue sky stuff. We very rarely said no to anything. It was just, let's try that, let's try that, let's try that. And so we had quite a few products that, we launched for a bit, kind of worked, wrapped them in, did other stuff. And so by the time we were acquired, we had, I think it's depending on how you categorize it, the way our R&D was organized was probably about somewhere between 9 and 13 business units building different bits of technology. Okay. Sitting across the top of that was the Office of the CTO. We didn't have absolute authority. We couldn't tell them what to do. We were kind of more like a religious leader in sort of, guiding them as to where they should be doing and doing it.
It was a very heavy influence.
Yeah, very heavy influence. Yeah,
saying Broadcom's a sect.
We did have, every technology company has some of that. You trust me. They have there's technology cults in any business. So if you think about what we were trying to do, let's rewind to sort of 2011, which is when I joined VMware. I was brought on as part of a team which included the future CEO Raghu Raghuram and the then CTO Steve Herod and a few others. And we ended up, I remember we have an internal conference called Radio, which stood for the R&D Innovation Offsite, which was pretty cool. It was like the thing to go to. It was proper geek science fair. It was awesome. And then I remember being in a bar in Monterey after that, a bunch of us talking about this concept back then of software-defined things. And we said, what about software-defined data center? And so, you had software-defined networking was being talked about and software-defined storage and so on. And we said, well, the whole data center should be software-defined because that's what essentially the cloud companies were doing. What, Amazon was doing, Werner was doing that, and Eric and team were doing it at Google and what they were doing with Borg, et cetera. So it's like, okay, fine. So we decided what we should do is essentially take what we were doing with virtualization and build an operating system for the data center. So the vision was this, and this will become important later on, is that you could basically rack up in your data center any tech you wanted, right? So I don't care, as long as it's x86 processor, it's got some storage attached to it and a network port, we'll whack it in there and it's the building block of the data center. We on the top will pour this layer of software-defined data center, this operating system for the data center, which will then magically include that into the pool of resources, and then you come to the top and you just get access to things. And every month you can go and buy some more hardware. Doesn't matter who you buy it from. Don't care, because we just plug it in and just add it to the pool or whatever. And so that's what the vision, that's what we built. And so over the years, we then had to say, okay, software-defined networking. We had kind of our own version of that, but we acquired Nicira, which became NSX, which is, literally, Open vSwitch. It's the de facto standard for virtualized networking now. Christoph Karamanlis and team. In fact, it was really funny. I bumped into him when I was at VMware, but he was actually my lab supervisor when I was doing my degree at Imperial College. So I've come back. I was like, I'm sure I recognize you. He invented vSAN. Amazing guy. Wow. And so we built vSAN. And then, off the back of that, we then invented a whole category with hyperconverged infrastructure. That started as a project called Project Marvin at VMware, which became Evo Rail and other things as well. So we created this whole world around this software-defined data center. Except we were still shipping it as bits to customers. We'd go, okay, well, there's the storage bit, and there's the networking bit, there's the compute bit, and here's a 400-page, VMware VVD of kind of like how you should assemble it. Good luck. That's nice, brilliant. There's some PS companies might be able to help you there, and we could probably do. That was kind of what we were doing. And we then built some integration on top of it, which was VCF. VMware Cloud Foundation. So we had VCF3, then VCF4, and VCF5, which is where we got to just before the acquisition. Now, the problem was that those 9, 10, 13 business units were all heading in slightly different directions. They were all competing in their own marketplace. The storage BU was off competing in the storage world, and the networking BU was off competing against Cisco, et cetera, another networking thing. And the hypervisor BU was off, making sure our hypervisor was still number one, et cetera, and making sure we're inventing cool things to go in there. And so they'd all do their bits, and they released them all at different times. And if anyone out there installed VCF 3, 4, or 5, the version numbers never matched up, and the support matrix was always like some kind of, impossible puzzle. I'm sure it's going to pop up as the 1% question at one point. And so you had this sort of thing, and also it lagged. So if you were running VCF and you came to me and said, there's a new version of vSphere out, the new version of the hypervisor, when can we install that? So, we've got to wait for the VCF team to catch up and blah, blah, blah. And that, frankly, was the problem, right? So going through the acquisition, Broadcom, Hock Tan, the CEO of Broadcom, who is an amazing man. I've learned an awful lot from him. Came through, and through the process acquisition, we came to the conclusion that actually the product that VMware should be selling was VCF. And what we were doing was we had, nearly 9,000 SKUs, hundreds of bundles you could buy, and it was all very, very complex, etc. I was like, well, let's just simplify this. If you go to Amazon, you buy public cloud, right? Surely you should be able to come to Broadcom and just go, I want to buy private cloud. What's that? Well, that's this SKU here, and it's got everything you need to operate a private cloud in it, and it's this much. And that's essentially what we did. So we reorganized, and this is the interesting thing, we reorganized the whole of R&D, flipped it on its head. So now VCF leads what we do as an architecture. All the components of that, hypervisor, network storage, orchestration, automation, etc., they all follow the roadmap of what's going on in VCF, etc. When it's released, with VCF9 came out, all the version numbers matched. That was more than just us changing numbers. It was actually putting dev roadmaps in lockstep, and then having a predictable future roadmap. Because before, if you'd come to me and said, when are we going to release the next version of VCF? I'd go, not really sure. I kind of have to do that and, feel it in the waters. Whereas now it's like, I know it's 9 months. So we'll release 9.1, 9 months after 9, and then, about 9 months after that, and so on. We've got a fairly regular cadence. So from a product perspective, the change has been absolutely fabulous, is all I can say. I'm happy and I'm excited, and I'm frankly still here because I honestly think I'm getting to deliver, and I really am with VCF9, what we first tried to do back in that bar in 2011. That's the important part of the story, that we had this vision around this operating system for the data center. And so now I can honestly turn up to you and go, I really can give you a private cloud that you can put on-prem that's better than the public cloud. And that's VCF9, and that's everything that we do in it. Now, granted, that caused some upsets. It changed how we interacted with partners. It changed how we interacted with service providers. It changed what we did. But interestingly, most people who go through that, who've been through that journey, come out of it and say, God, this needed to be done. A lot of the things we're doing, most of us are going, I wish we'd done this 5 years ago. We did a lot of it in a very short time. So, there are a lot of Band-Aids.
There wasn't much breathing room, was there?
No.
It was just, this is what we're doing, let's go with it, wasn't it?
Well, you imagine what it's like on the inside.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
From the outside, it was like, wow. But from the inside, but it is, I learned there's one word I would sum up from, if you wanted to say what's Broadcom brought to all of this, and what's the one thing we have, it's focus. It's unbelievable focus on delivering the code on time, focus on delivering the this operating system data centers. It's just such a focus that VMware never had, I think, really. And the people that dealt with it, it's a lovely company, and we did all amazing, fantastic technology in all sorts of different ways, but it was no, it's a clear focus. And I think that's what's resonated with customers. So when we've gone and spoken to customers, it's very clear. Hock Tan stands on stage and says, private cloud is it, to your intro, right? And I now get to confidently go into customers and go, private cloud's it. And they go, okay. And I go, well, I've been saying that for the last 15 years, but now finally you might believe me.
And are the technical people appreciating the way that the stack all hangs up on on serial numbers, reference numbers, and version numbers?
I think that the version number thing is interesting. I think the most important thing actually about what we've done in VCF9 is around the operating model. So we've tried it's much easier to deploy and much easier to operate. That's what we focused on. Okay, so if you look at the release of VCF9, look at the components, there's a few cool things we've done. In vSphere, we've got memory tiering, and we've got a few other whistles and bells we put in there, and each of the components has got some cool stuff that we've done in it. There's no doubt we've got some new things in ESX9, etc. But all the real change is in that operations and automation layer that sits on top of it. So and at Explore in London recently, I went and looked at the hands-on labs, and afterwards I spoke to a few people, and the sort of eyes were wide open, like, this is really cool. This is really simple now. It actually works. I've got the fleet level management stuff I was looking for. I've got all the tools at my fingertips to be able to properly run a private cloud, rather than me feeling like I'm building it myself, which is what we were doing before.
It feels like that positivity has been lost then, because obviously it's been quite a tough period of time. Obviously the channel changes, etc. Yet, we've not heard massive positive news like you just explained. Then is that something that we can work on?
I think I need to be telling more people the positive news, don't I?
If only we had a podcast that we could do it on.
I'd say we know that the Fortune 500 companies are going absolutely crazy for VCF, right? They are eating it up, right? So 3-year, 5-year, 10-year, however many year deals they want.
7 and 10-year deals regularly.
Yes. Why do you think that is? Why are they absolutely loving it? And then you have these critics, who think it's not good for them, or it's not a good fit, or why do you think that is?
So the large enterprises, the Fortune 500, etc., the over 87%. I think it's more than 90%.
Yeah,
now
it's
the
a
top
big
10,000,
number. Yeah,
of our customers that have signed up, all the strategic customers that I deal with, it's all the same story, right? The story was they've been staring at the public cloud for a while because that's what they were told to do, because the public cloud's the cool, shiny thing. So they've been staring at the shiny like this for ages. Oh, public cloud, oh. And that's where all the money's gone, all the investment, all the training, all the skills, etc. And now they're realizing that they do need a private cloud, that the public cloud isn't going to solve all their problems. Whether it's, cost, compliance or complexity, there's reasons why they need to do stuff on-prem. So then they're turning around and looking back at what they've got on-prem and they're going, that's not very good. It's like, well, you haven't been looking at it for ages. You've literally let it sort of, wither on the vine or whatever metaphor you want to come up with. But also the interesting thing is it's also grown. Because the on-prem need didn't die away, but because you didn't manage it properly. And I mean, I go to so many customers, large enterprises, and they've got, 3 versions of the private cloud. There's private cloud 1, 2, 3, and they've obviously got their company name, something XPC or whatever it is the name. And realistically, when you go and talk to them, they suddenly realize, actually, we need to do this properly. The challenge is that on-prem, typically, they've never really followed the same rules that they did when they went to public cloud. When you go to public cloud, you're told, that's it. And you go, actually, I don't quite like that, but it can have that different. No, that's it. That's what you do. You talk to these APIs, it costs this much, you use it. Whereas on-prem, all the complexity comes because someone's gone, yeah, I really like this storage vendor, and so all our storage is going to be by this storage vendor. But that's not appropriate for all your workloads. Yeah, I don't care because that's what we're doing. I know that. It's my favorite thing. And we're going with this networking company because this networking company, blah, blah, all that stuff. And you end up with, so what you end up with on-prem is what people misguidedly, I like to call best of breed. So you go and talk to these large enterprises. What they've got is they've got best of breed private clouds, which don't work. And they don't work because it's like trying to build a best of breed car. If you went to go and build a best of breed car, you go, oh yeah, I really, really like, I'm going to operate a fleet of taxis. So obviously, what's the thing you buy if you buy fleets of taxis? Mercedes, right? Because everyone drives around Mercedes for fleets of taxis. But there just happens to be in your guy in your taxi firm that's got a 57-year history of working with BMW gearboxes. So what he's decided is actually we're going to buy some Mercedes taxis, but we're going to run BMW gearboxes in them because that's what he knows, and we've got really good expertise in BMW gearboxes. And there's someone else out there who's gone, actually, yeah, I've got a really nice affinity for a particular type of engine from Ferrari from 1968, which we really like, and we run all our major systems on this Ferrari engine. So you end up with these taxis that, quite frankly, oh yeah, they've got really cool bits in them, but put it together, it's disgusting. And then you turn back up to Mercedes and go, can you fix this? And they look at you and go, what the hell have you done? I can't fix this. And and that's basically what you see on-prem in most people. Whereas now it's absolutely beautiful because I'm now getting CIOs that I sit with and their CTOs and whatever you want to call the levels underneath that, and it varies massively, saying to me, I'm dictating that we're going to take VCF from you and we're going to run it as you say, your architecture, your components, and if you catch any of my team ripping it apart and trying to swap the gearbox and swap the engine and swap whatever, tell me, because we're not going to get in that problem again. So that's the real difference. What the big change is they're going, okay, fine, I know I need to have a private cloud on-prem, but I need to run it the same way as a public cloud. If it's going to be the same way as a public cloud, if it's going to be cheaper than a public cloud and better than a public cloud, I need to listen to the people that are selling. I mean, look, you don't buy servers from Dell and then rip bits out of them and put other bits in them, do you? You buy a managed, that's what you buy whatever it is. So go a layer up, private cloud, buy that software from someone and just run it.
And I'd say that's the real difference between the old VMware as well, because as you said, you used to be sort of like a parts company, and now you're actually selling the car.
Yeah, completely.
So it is crazy to think.
And I wanted to, because one of the metaphors we used back in the day when we looked at the software-defined data center was we looked at those public clouds and we said, okay, look at Google, for example. Google was the equivalent of a Formula One team. When it came to running a public cloud, they had the most expensive, best engineers in the world. They were running one cloud that did one particular thing, which was, running, their platform and all those kind of things. And if you turn around and you were Co-op Bank in Manchester and you wanted to do it, you didn't have the F1 engineers. You didn't have all that kind of stuff. So you couldn't do that. You couldn't do that on-prem. So what I said was we need to almost be like the Toyota back then of car manufacturers. We can come to us and you can come and buy, because not everyone wants an F1 car, but what they want is that car that's going to do what they want, is easy, supportable, repeatable, scale, model, all that kind of stuff. And it comes out to the same thing.
I guess that'd take us swiftly into some customers think that VCF restricts their choice. A lot of customers like to pick, what they want in their stack. Yeah. What do you say to that?
So the leaders in our industry, from a IT leadership perspective, have two words they want to talk about: standardization and simplification. Every CIO has a mantra around standardization and simplification. So a lot of their challenges come from that overcomplication before and almost giving people too many choice. So depending on how you look at it, yeah, okay, you could say, oh, we're selecting NSX, but you're selecting NSX networking as opposed to what? Another hardware provider that's going to sell you hardware-based networking. Or you're selecting vSAN, which allows you to attach any kind of storage you like to it, basically to any type of server. No, actually what I want to do is I want to go to this other storage company that is very prescriptive about how they put their storage in. So actually, when you think about it, what we're trying to do is give people more choice. So in that VCF layer, you get a choice. You can run on any, the storage is vSAN is awesome, right? You can attach loads of different types of storage to it. You can buy different people. It works. NSX works on any white box flat layer 2 network you want. Just go and buy yourself some flat layer 2 network. We do it internally at Broadcom. It's all white box stuff running Sonic. It's phenomenal. We're not tied to any particular networking hardware. We have more choice, right? Storage, we have more choice. Processors, well, fantastic, right? Any x86, but now, of course, we support GPUs as well. So we support multiple different types of GPUs. And going forward, you're going to see XPUs, TPUs, DPUs, and others, and that's on our roadmap. So you'll have even more choice of what runs in this heterogeneous data center. So actually, what you're getting is you're getting a layer of standardization and simplification that supports all these lovely protocols northbound, like Kubernetes, etc. But southbound allows you an amazing amount of choice. So you're not tied to any particular hardware vendor, any particular technology. You get that real flexibility. And running in hundreds of public clouds. So it's more choice. It's just different people have a different lens.
So we touched on data sovereignty earlier on. So who controls the data and under which laws? So we've obviously seen Police Scotland ask Microsoft, and they couldn't answer the question where the data was being processed. We've seen the French Senate take Microsoft to court because they couldn't guarantee that French data held in Paris stayed in Paris and didn't end up in the US. So how's VMware going to deliver
What's the alternative? Yeah.
Sovereignty is about caring about where your data is and who has access to your data. There's a couple of things, right? So where is my data and who has access to it? Is it only me or could other people do it? The big fly in the ointment with all of these things, the examples you just came up with, is the US Cloud Act, which means that the operator of a cloud, if they're a US entity, it doesn't matter where that data is in the world. If they're a US entity, then the US government can ask and get access to data anywhere in the world, which is why these hyperscalers do that. So if you're taking a cloud that's operated as the service provider by a US entity, you're never going to solve that problem. So you'll see a lot of fantastic marketing by cloud providers where they start to talk about trusted clouds and other things or whatever. But the problem is if it's still a cloud, it doesn't matter if it's operating out of a data center based in the UK, as the Police Scotland found and others, the potential is there because they're the operator of a US company that they could come and the US government could come in and do that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they would, but
They could.
They could, right? So that's a source of major concern, both from, private sector. Some people are concerned about that. We see it massive concern in public sector, critical national infrastructure, all those kind of things. People are concerned about what they do with that. So what's the answer? Well, the answer is you don't use a service that's operated by an American entity or a Chinese entity or any other foreign entity that you don't want to trust. So what you do is you operate it yourself, or you get a UK-based entity in the context of what we're talking about here to do that. So you get a UK cloud provider to stand up a UK cloud in UK data centers using UK staff with a UK legal entity, paying UK tax as well, which is quite nice, right? And then we will provide the software for them to operate that public cloud. So that's our answer, is we say, okay, fine, well, we will give you the software to operate the cloud. We have nothing to do with it. We're just a provider of the software, much like you're going to go and buy the x86 chips from some other foreign entity or whatever. But once it's up and running, it's your control. The benefit of that, though, is also, as a lot of people are finding, is because all these public clouds are running VCF, and it's exactly and directly compatible with the VCF they're running on-prem in their private cloud, they can freely move stuff to and from. So we're seeing a lot of people realize that they can run a very powerful sovereign enterprise, both on-prem and still in public cloud providers, but the right public cloud provider doing the right service.
And is the AI playing into this? Because you read about anything you put in ChatGPT, that ownership goes off to wherever.
Yeah, there's some fantastic horror stories, aren't there?
Oh, there always will be. Yeah.
People getting source code popping up that other people are asking us. Yeah, so of course, and that's the other, that's the leading concern that I'm getting when I'm talking to IT leaders and business leaders, is that they can get into AI, but their data stays their data. Yeah. And so that's where we came up with the concept of private AI, and we talk quite openly and often about private AI, but the concept of that is that really we support AI, and we have an offering that's now part of VCF, which we announced in Explore, that comes free, included in VCF9 is the private AI pay, which sits in there. And what that does is that enables you to support AI workloads on VCF, whether it's on-prem or in that sovereign cloud. So now you can go, actually, what I'd really do is, what's really powerful for me is I'd love to have an LLM that's pointed at every contract I've ever written. And when my teams are writing new contracts, they can use that as an assistant. But I want to know that all that data stays within my direct control. You can do that with private AI from VMware by Broadcom. But it goes beyond that, because people are now saying, okay, well, actually, there's permissioning levels within that. So we can do, so AI has a concept of RAG, which is a retrieval augmented, which is essentially a database that sits alongside, right? Now, we can do a permissioning level thing within that, so you can have multiple different levels of permissions within those RAG databases. So if you're a government entity, for example, you've got, restricted, confidential, secret, top secret. We can have 4 different databases, all put into the same LLM. And depending on when you come to it, if you're only allowed to access up to level 2, you'll only get the LLM answering from the data in level 2. But if you access someone from level 4 will get answer from all of them. So we've got, again, that granularity permission in there too. So and the other thing is cost. It's not just about people being concerned about the AI, having access to data they don't want to have access in the public cloud, but it's cost. We're running AI typically on-prem at a third of the cost in an inference basis than it costs in a public cloud. So people are not doing it just because it's, data protection. It's also cheaper in most cases.
You've said before, running a proper cloud
Yep.
Should mean thinking like a cloud provider.
Yep.
How does VCF change this?
So it really changes it in both the deployment and the organization model. So we take our customers through a thing called the PCMO, which is about private cloud maturity, right? And that's really helping customers change their organization as well as change their technology. So, I could go and drop VCF9 into you tomorrow, but you'll never make the most of it if you don't change your organization to think like a cloud provider. So more importantly, we got rid of all our silos to build VCF9 within our organization. If you think about all those different BUs, and we created one thing focused on VCF. So we need our customers' organizations to do that. And it helps them do that because it's got all the bits and pieces in there to help people be a bit more organized around doing that, in terms of the dashboards and the controls and the compliance and the drift management and all the fleet management stuff that we've got in there. It enables you to do incredible things at scale that you've never been able to do before. And I think that's the real thing. So let's talk about scale, because that's really exciting to me. So Broadcom, when they acquired VMware, VMware had 45,000 physical hosts for 40,000 employees, which is an interesting one for a virtualization company, right? You'd think that. And over the process of the consolidation of the Broadcom existing infrastructure and the VMware infrastructure, we now have an environment that supports 27 unique individual businesses, because that's how Broadcom operates, some of which literally are like Pepsi and Coke in terms of the chip business. They can't talk to each other, etc. So they're entirely separate. Some of them are Symantec testing malware. So, oh my God, you want that stuff properly separated. So we run one central cloud platform for 27 business units, okay, for a $1.6 trillion company. So the 7th or 8th largest company in the world.
Only going up.
What? And only going up. Yeah. On 15,000 physical hosts, we went from 42 to 7 data centers in 14 months. And we went from 2,500 people managing our private cloud to 68. So how does VCF9 help? That's how it helps. We can get you down from 2,500 staff to 68 staff, running a cloud that 15,000 physical hosts, actually supporting more than before, across 27 discrete business units that run globally in a $1.7 trillion business. So when I walk into a bank, that's 55,000 people in the IT department. I'm sort of a bit, our CIO can't believe it. He's a bit aghast. He's like, that's probably 10 times too many. And even then, 10 times too many.
So is this your total cost of ownership example then?
Yeah, it's one of them.
Your internal.
It's one of them. Our internal Broadcom on Broadcom. And people are like, oh yeah, but no. Our CIO, because the way that Hock Tan runs things, had to pay for the software. So he didn't get the software for free, because you don't get it for free, right? So he had to pay for the software. But more importantly, our CIO directly reports to Hock Tan and has the direct support of him. But you want to talk about standardization and simplification. Oh, wow, there's standardization and simplification in Broadcom. You don't get to say, I want that. It's like, no, what you're given is this. That's what you're going to work out and operate like that. So it's very lean, very, very slick operations model in IT, and also multi-skilled. And that's the other important thing. So you talk about how do organizations change. Go and talk to Alan Davison, our CEO. He'll tell you there's no one who's just a networking person. They're networking and storage. They're compute and networking. They're all multi-skilled, because I don't need single-skilled people, because you've got to think multi-skilled in this world. So if you are thinking of moving on in your career and you're just thinking about, I'm the networking guy, you're not going to go very far in the future world of building integrated private clouds.
So I was at the channel for a couple of years, certainly when VMware were purchased by Broadcom. The misconception from afar was that there was a brutal approach to the channel. Prices went up, people got terminated. The price increases versus the total cost of ownership example seemed to be a misnomer. How can we address that? How can you guys address that for us? Because obviously when we're talking to our customers, everyone is complaining about the cost increases, but actually it sounds like there's far more of an offering for them to take up.
Yeah, so the problem you quite generally have is we'll go and talk to a customer, and the customer is mainly seeing us as someone who provides their hypervisor. We're not doing networking for them. We might be doing a bit of storage for them. So when you start going and say, okay, well, here's VCF, they're almost like, well, that's way more expensive than I'm paying. It's like, yeah, but you're getting so much more. Now, of course, that's a bit of a weak argument, right? Of course, you're getting so much more. But actually, if you do want to make the most of it, you will find that you will lower the total cost of ownership. But it's going through that journey with people. We've just been through it with a customer, very, very, very large business, and they sort of came to us and said, here's our architecture. And we walked in and we halved the total cost of running that by deploying VCF. And they said, here's our infrastructure. To run VCF on that would cost this much. And you're going, well, no, it wouldn't. Where have you got that number from? Well, we spoke to some other people in other companies. Well, you didn't talk to the people selling it to you. So come and have the conversation with us. And I think that's a lot of hearsay and rumors going around. And I quite often sit across the table from the top people in a very large bank going, oh, renewal, we know it's going to cost this much. You're like, where do you make that number up from? Well, we kind of guessed, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, if you, for instance, if you had a CIO come up to you and say, we're moving away from VMware because your price is extortionate, what would you turn around and say to them?
Mine would be a conversation about what they're trying to achieve with their IT. Literally, where are you going and where do you... Because, like I say, they probably got what we do framed in the wrong context. They probably go, well, I'm looking at different hypervisors. You think, well, if you think all we are is a hypervisor, then you've got us wrong, right? I'm going to switch away, go and use some other random thing. Well, then fine, you're probably not the right person for VCF in that context anyway, if you're just looking in that way. But if you're saying, actually, what I want to do is I want to build a proper private cloud, a real private cloud that operates better and cheaper than a public cloud, then we'll have a conversation. And we went to finish the example. I went to this customer and they sort of said, we've priced up what we think it will cost us to renew. And you went, well, yeah, but if we actually went and looked at your environment, I can halve the number of servers you've got based on your current architecture. And if we halve the number of servers you've got over the next 3 years and look at then how you won't need to buy more servers and everything else like that, and look at the architecture, and look, let's change how your networking is going to be done because you don't need all the physical networking. And all those physical load balances you've got, you can do all that with Avi and software and blah, 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 blah. We ended up with an architecture that ended up, including the cost of VCF9, was less than they were paying today just for us. So it's like your total cost is going to be much, but the problem is people are still doing their best to breathe thinking, right? So it's like, okay, well, I've come to you and you've just told me that the price of my engine is going to double and that's going to make my car really expensive. I'm like, well, have you thought about maybe trying a whole different car that's better, modern, faster, integrated, does everything for you? I suppose that's really the way to think about it.
Is the example you shared with us, is that I want to create my architecture and my infrastructure to be a cost-efficient solution, or is that to be at the leading edge of whatever they do in their business unit? Is there a difference between I want to be driving change, whether it be online selling, like an e-website, e-portal, or is it just, we know what we're good at, we're sticking to our knitting, and we're just going to make it the most efficient back office system we can have? Where do you play in that? Are you at the leading edge or at just real cost management, cost curtailment, and savings?
What do you think I'm going to answer?
we'll say all of them, I'm guessing.
Correct. Yeah, of course I'm going to say both, right? So if you go into a bank, for example, they have two major projects in any bank. Run the bank, change the bank, right? It's all you do. Yeah. Run the bank, change the bank, run the bank, change the bank. For years, they've been trying to bring them together. The difficult thing for us is we can do both. We're going to go in and help them lower the cost they run the bank whilst changing the bank. But the problem is it's two different people to talk to. You know, it's kind of a challenge, right? And so that's where their organizations hold them back. But yes, we are obviously helping them down. So FinOps is a huge conversation, right? For large enterprises, FinOps is a huge conversation. We've got a whole bunch of stuff in VCF9 that helps with FinOps in costing prediction, all that kind of stuff, which makes a big difference. So yes, we're doing that, but at the same time, we're deploying, and this is the other thing. I went to, someone else asked me recently, he said, you know, he saw everything that we did on-prem as legacy and saw everything in the public cloud as being future and modern. It was like, well, no, I can do everything you want to do in the public cloud that you think is future and modern in terms of application architecture services, you know, all the way you'd want to build stuff. But I can do it on-prem, and I can do it probably a bit faster and a bit cheaper for you. But they hadn't thought like that. So you've got to do both, I think is the answer. You have to take people down that journey of both. And that's difficult because you're trying to get people to change a lot of things at the same time. And people aren't good at changing a lot of things. People aren't good at a lot of variables. You know, they just can't change a lot of things at the same time. So us going in and saying, actually, we've got, you know, you're going to change how you operate, you're going to change what you operate, you're going to change the architecture, everything else. But we're getting really good at going through that process with the customers, certainly the strategic and the you know, the top end area with our consulting, and then with our partners, the consulting partners that we've got that are going out and doing that. I think that's really where they're going to have to help. It's not just about tech, it's about operations models. And it's so important that people understand that it is about, the first thing I said, people and process. You've got to get the people and process right, because that is what's going to hold you back. So the reason why it's going to be more expensive is probably not us, it's your people and process. And the way that you're going to do it is going to make it more expensive. Your architecture is probably going to make it more expensive. I went to a customer recently and talked to them, I said to them, I found a new way to lower the number of cores you're using. And they looked at me and went, well, what are you doing? I said, well, I've just found a way to literally reduce your core usage by a third. And they sort of looked at me, well, why would you do that? Because that means we'd have to pay you less. I said, yeah, but I'm not here for this week. I'm here for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
We're here for a long-term partnership with you. So I want you to see you're getting value out of that. I don't want to come in and say, oh, yeah, we've architected this big thing and sell you a load of hardware and walk away, as some other organizations would. So that's when, and those conversations, when you start talking about TCO, you start talking about long-term value, you start talking about evolving their people and process, being competitive, new technologies, having a choice in the platform going forwards of what runs on it and what they can run on it. That's when someone goes, I'm in with you for 7 years, I'm in with you for 10 years. What's the deal? How do we do it? And those are the conversations we're having. It's really, it's exciting because we never really had those conversations before at VMware, because as you say, we were always a bit kind of a parts seller. You know, you're always going in talking to bits of the business. Now, you know, if you start talking, you know, as Broadcom has been, we're having more mature conversations.
And who would you credit with that focus from like the multi-layered, multi-offering to the single point of VCF? Who's that visionary? Is that Hock Tan?
Yeah, I'd say it was Hock Tan. I mean, honestly, it was Hock. He saw what the market opportunity was. He saw what people were thinking in the customer. I mean, I'm not kidding. Hock Tan can pick up the phone to pretty much most CEOs and CIOs in the world and have a chat with them. It's quite amazing, to be honest. And that's what he does a lot, is, you know, spend his time with those people. He spends more time with I've never seen a CEO spend more time with customers ever than Hock Tan, certainly not in our business. I mean, literally, he's all the time he's out seeing our largest customers, whether they're coming to see him in Palo Alto or he's out on tour seeing them. And so when you talk to him, his finger is absolutely on the button as to what our customers want, what they need, what's causing them problems, you know, all those kind of things. And trust me, our product teams feel it. They feel it. You'll talk about the word focus. It comes direct from Mr. Hock Tan himself. So yeah, that vision, that simplicity, it's been, frankly, we've done it quickly. Don't get me wrong. And yeah, there's been bumps along the road, as I think you said, but the focus has just been, you know, relentless, but it's been refreshing. I found it's very, very good. Yeah, honestly.
And who would you give credit for the pricing? As I said, when I was at the channel, the misnomer was it's all become far more expensive. It's doubled in price. Yeah. Obviously, your market cap and the purchase price has gone from 60 plus billion to, are we into mid 70s, 80 billion now? Is it something like that? Maybe even higher.
What for VMware? We don't carve the VMware bit out, but I know that the stock price has more than doubled since the acquisition.
So who would you credit with that sort of pricing strategy then? Because there's an accountant somewhere, I reckon.
Come on, Joe, take the credit. This is what we want. Click this.
I'm the chief technology officer. I'm not the chief pricing or modeling or licensing officer. I don't get
But
involved
that's a
in
massive play to do what the pricing appeared to do from outside. I'll use the phrase doubled it, and the business has continued to grow exponentially in a fairly flat market.
Well, it's
and not being on AI as well. Sorry to cut across you, but
no. All credit. I think it's been a very well executed journey.
No one name you're going to give credit to?
No, I can't remember. Hock Tan again, I suppose.
Really? Okay. All roads lead there.
Yeah.
If I think we should quickly touch on automation and maybe a little bit of AI wrapped around VCF. I was at Explore. Obviously, we met at Explore in London. And they were going on about automation and how this is going to change, for the IT teams out there.
Yeah, I think so. We've had automation in the cloud platform for a very long time, since the acquisition of Dynamic Ops many years ago, which ultimately became vRealize and then ARIA. So there's been various names, but essentially what you're looking is that automation and operations piece, which is VR Ops, sort of come together. I gave a keynote in 2011 to VMUG in the UK, in the National Motorcycle Museum in Birmingham. And it was automate or die was kind of my mantra, because it was, again, those people out there that were doing the components. And I said, if you're specifying SCSI cable lengths, you're probably not going to be around much longer, right? The trick is going to be in automation. The trick is going to be in scale. The focus that we put in the last 18 months or more to complete what we've been doing for a few years, but accelerate it massively around those fleet management features is huge. And I think it's what everyone gets most impressed by. And it's automation of a couple of things. It's automation for two audiences, because you've got to automate for the IT admin, but also automate for the customer, the developer. And so the fact that we have this, you go and see the Explore keynote, there's a demo for the IT admin, then there's a demo for the developer, because we've got to talk to both these audiences. And the IT admin audience is all about helping you manage risk and manage the security and set guardrails and make sure that you can still do things at speed, and make sure that for the developer, they still have a fast, flexible environment that is secure. And so when you look at what we're doing in automation there, it is those fleet level management things. The stuff we've got in there, like the live upgrade. You've seen the live upgrade features?
The no downtime. Yeah.
So a non-evacuation upgrade of a host. Unbelievable, right? So cool. That was something I saw previewed as an idea at Radio, the R&D conference, probably about 7 or 8 years ago. As we'll try and do this, and we use the we use the vMotion technology and other bits to kind of do what we're doing there. So there's some really, really cool stuff in there. And the bits in terms of how we're doing all the configuration drift management and all the other bits of technology that we've got in the automation layer means that someone sitting as the console for an IT admin should be essentially not having to do as much as they did before in terms of trying to pull bits and pieces together to make this all work. And yes, of course, we're putting AI assistants in there as well to make it a bit easier, so you can ask natural language, what's up with this and what's the best way to do this. We don't have remediation in there yet because we don't quite trust the AI to do that yet, but at least give you some hints and tips on what you should be doing, and then go look and be able to do that. And sort of bring that in, and then integrating, and that's the other thing, is the integration piece. So integrating vDefend, the VMware Live Recovery, the ransomware recovery, which is a huge topic right now, right? All of those things being much easier and integrated and managed from one console in essence is much easier. I'm never going to say single pane of glass because it's a horrible thing, but bringing it together as much as possible, people. And the lovely thing about it is when people see that console, you've got a GUI, you've got a CLI now, and you've got an API as well. So if you want to do it through the GUI, you can click and point. If you want to do it through command line, you can go straight to a terminal and start doing it through a command line. And if you want to whack YAML files at it, you can do it through that as well. It doesn't really matter. And in fact, the nice thing is, as you're building something in the developer interface, it's actually building those out for you as well. So you can flick between the two. So, I get very confused very quickly sometimes in my home lab playing about, and yes, I do have one, playing about between some of these things. But yeah, it's phenomenal. So for me, when I look at it, the ease of use is just huge, because if you're going to get 68 people to operate, a private cloud for a huge company, you've got to have that level of automation there. You can't exist without it.
And it doesn't really make much sense when you have CIOs complaining, saying, "Oh, it's not going to work here, it's not going to do that. I want it to do. I want my total cost of ownership to go down." You've got to think they must not understand the product completely. Where are they getting this information from? But I would say for IT leaders, right, who are watching this now, and they feel maybe left behind by the shift, what do you say to them?
Automate or die.
Bring it back. We need to get that on a shirt. You can find them, link below.
Yeah, I got on commission on that as well, please. Thank you very much. No, seriously, that's it. If you're going to do this stuff at scale, you've got to automate. If you want the simplicity, you want the standardization, you've got to automate. And I think the problem is that the things that stop people automating are people seeing themselves being automated out of a job. And I think that's part of the problem. You get to an organization and say, oh, actually, if I do all that automated, then what do I do all day? The answer is you move up a level. Yeah. And you control more things, and you get bigger, right? You don't sit there and watch yourself get automated away. You move yourself up and become the person that does that. And it's interesting because that's a continual thing in technology, right? A continual thing. God, yeah, I was back in the 90s when I was rolling out compact Reliant 4500s and getting excited about RAID controllers and things in what version of firmware it was. And that's fine, but no one cares about that stuff anymore because it's black boxy stuff. We just whack it and it's fine. And a friend's talk about AI. I had a friend's son who's just graduated in video editing. He's got degrees, a 3-year degree in video editing. And I said, so what are you doing? And he said, and this is about 2 years ago. And he sort of came to me. So I said, what's your plan? He said, well, basically, I've set up this website. And what people do is they upload clips and they tell me how they want them edited together. And then I send it back to them. And then they say, oh, can you change this bit and do that bit? And I basically do an online free video editing service. I went, are you using AI tools to do that? No. I said, well, okay, well, you need to start using AI tools to do that because otherwise what you're doing is going to be replaced by AI because what you're describing is exactly what AI is saying it's going to do. Is you should be able to upload a load of videos to an AI engine and then mash it together for you. And then you go, no, move this bit, change that, whatever. So I've just replaced you. What you need to be is you need to be some person using the AI tools. And it's the same for developers. And people think, oh, we're going to get rid of all of our developers because we're going to use AI. No, actually, that's not happened at all. What's happening is you're now getting developers augmented by AI and so on and so forth. So actually, all this technology augments people. So when I say automate or die, it very much is augment yourself with these automation tools or become part of the change. Be the visionary that says, I'm going to be the one that automates private cloud. I'm going to build a private cloud for my company. That's what I'm going to do. Not I'm going to fight it back because I've got this particular network vendor or this storage vendor written through me and I'm never going to change.
Joe, we call this podcast State of Systems for a reason, and we always have a closing question. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you that private cloud is here to stay?
I don't think the scale reaches where we need to be, does it?
Well, we've just had Spinal Tap 2 coming out, right? So I'm going to have to go to 11, aren't I? I mean, look, my career's bet on it. The stock market's betting on it too. And I think, you can just see from our customers, private cloud is here to stay. People are going to need it. So it's definitely an 11 without question.
Thank you. So we did want to dig deeper as well on the Broadcom just released the Private Cloud Outlook 2025, the maturity advantage. Please tell us more.
So we went out and did a survey of hundreds of our customers, over 200 in Europe alone. I think it was 200 in the UK, actually. It was much, much wider than that. Hundreds of our customers coming out to properly ask them, the questions about, what are you doing about private cloud? What are you doing in public cloud? Are you, why are you coming back on-prem with private cloud? Why are you repatriating? How many of you are repatriating? And there's some fantastic stats in there about exactly what people are doing. But the overwhelming trend is people have landed on the fact that and if you need that data support to go and make your own decisions or make your own justifications for why you need to have a private cloud, basically people have decided it's right workload, right place. They're going to have public cloud. They're going to have private cloud. And if they're going to use private cloud, let's do it right.
And we will put a link to the Private Cloud Outlook in the show notes as well. Thank you so much, Joe Baguley, for joining us today.
It's been fun.